Blue lights smeared across my garage door while a teenager in a varsity jacket tried to unwedge his mother's Lexus from my brick mailbox. He pointed at me with a trembling finger, bleeding guilt and radiator fluid onto my driveway. "My mom says you're paying for this," he declared with the confidence of someone who'd never faced a consequence in his entire privileged life. I nodded calmly, reached into my pocket for my phone, pressed play on my doorbell camera footage, and the sickening crunch replayed like a laugh track. The color drained from his face faster than the coolant leaking onto my driveway. He tried to say something else, but his voice cracked halfway through, and he just stood there looking like he wanted the earth to swallow him whole. "My name is Colin Mercer. I'm a quiet systems engineer who grills on Sundays, waves at everybody, and keeps to myself in a way that apparently makes some people nervous. I live on the edge of Birch Ridge Meadows, a subdivision that treats bylaws like the Ten Commandments and architectural guidelines like constitutional amendments. Our HOA president is Greta Larch, a woman who wears pearls to yell about recycling bins and thinks mediation means she talks while you nod and agree with everything she says. She has a voice that could strip paint and a smile that comes with terms and conditions you don't see until it's too late. Her pride and joy is her son, Tyler, an 18-year-old who acts like he has diplomatic immunity and drives like the laws of physics are more like suggestions. In Greta's carefully constructed world, rules apply to everyone except her family, and she wields her HOA clipboard like a medieval scepter, ready to strike down anyone who dares to plant the wrong shade of rosebush. It started 3 weeks earlier with tire marks on my lawn that looked like crop circles designed by someone who'd failed geometry, deep gouges in the grass, rubber streaks that curved at impossible angles. Then I noticed a fresh dent in my steel gate that matched the exact height and width of a Lexus front end. I didn't have to guess whose Lexus, theirs. Only one family in Birch Ridge Meadows that drives a pearl white Lexus ES 350 with vanity plates that read LCH1. Greta materialized at my door the next morning before I'd even finished my coffee, armed with her clipboard and a smile that had terms and conditions attached. "Your mailbox violates aesthetic guidelines," she announced, planting a violation notice in my hand while deliberately ignoring the pulverized bricks scattered across my driveway like confetti from a very angry party. "Replace it to approved specification within 14 days. The HOA will not be liable for any damages, whether to vehicles or property." I stared at her. "My mailbox has been here for 8 years, I said. "You approved it yourself when I moved in." She tapped her pen against the clipboard. "That was a different board. This board has updated standards. Your mailbox is too far from the curb and constitutes a traffic hazard." I looked at the mailbox, then at the tire marks on my lawn that proved someone had driven 15 feet off the road to hit it. Greta turned on her heel and left before I could respond, her pearl necklace bouncing with each step. By evening, next door posts started appearing like weeds after rain. "Beware Colin's aggressive mailbox." One read, posted by an account I'd never seen before. Another warned in all caps, "Some neighbors create hazards instead of community." A third post featured a blurry photo of my house with a caption about property values and safety concerns. Tyler strutted past my house that afternoon with 2 of his friends, snapping photos with his phone and talking loudly enough for me to hear every word. "Dude parked his mailbox too close to the curb," he said, laughing. "Totally his fault." His friends laughed, too. That performative laugh of teenagers who know they're being watched. The next day, an envelope appeared in that same mailbox, the one that was apparently such a menace to society. Inside was a demand letter printed on official HOA letterhead, signed by Greta in her looping, aggressive handwriting. $1,240 for emotional distress, vehicle detailing, and loss of use of vehicle, plus a warning in bold letters that non-payment would result in lien consideration and additional fines. She'd actually put it in writing on official paper with her signature. I stared at that letter for a long time, reading it 3 times to make sure I wasn't hallucinating. Then I remembered my cameras. See, I'm a systems engineer. I spent 15 years designing redundant systems for data centers. I like backup plans and fail-safes. I have 3 cameras covering my front yard, and they all run on separate power sources with cloud backup that uploads every 60 seconds. I pulled up the footage from the night of the incident and watched it twice to make sure I wasn't imagining things. The timestamp read 11:43 p.m. Tyler had backed Greta's Lexus out of their driveway, one-handed, while FaceTiming someone, his phone balanced on the steering wheel. He swerved dramatically to avoid their sprinkler system, which had popped up mid. He overcorrected hard to the left, accelerated instead of braking, and plowed into my brick mailbox at approximately 25 miles per hour, like it owed him lunch money. The impact was spectacular. Bricks exploded. The mailbox post bent at a 45 angle. The Lexus bounced backward with its front bumper dangling. Tyler sat there for maybe 10 seconds, still holding his phone before throwing the car into drive and limping back to his driveway with coolant spraying everywhere. But the rail kicker came when I checked Tyler's social media accounts. I'd never followed him, but his profiles were public, set to share with the world. He posted a selfie from inside the car at exactly 11:38 p.m., 5 minutes before the crash. The caption read, "Whipping mom's ride, don't care," complete with a sunglasses emoji, a fire emoji, and a timestamp that matched my footage perfectly. In the photo, you could clearly see the Lexus interior, the streetlights of our neighborhood, and Tyler's face lit up by phone glow. I took screenshots of everything. Then I took screenshots of the screenshots. Then I backed everything up to 3 different cloud services because I'm not an amateur. The next morning, Greta filed a police report. I know this because an officer showed up at my door at 8:30 a.m. asking about the incident. He looked young, maybe late 20s, with a patient expression of someone who'd already dealt with his share of HOA disputes. According to Greta's statement, I had swerved my mailbox into the street. Yes, she actually said that out loud to a police officer with a straight face. She also claimed I'd threatened Tyler when I asked him to exchange insurance information, which never happened because Tyler had peeled out before I could even get my shoes on. The officer looked tired already. He asked if I had any evidence or witnesses. I invited him inside and showed him everything. The video footage from 3 different angles showing the entire crash in high definition. Screenshots of Tyler's social media post with a timestamp and caption. The demand letter from Greta demanding $1,200. The HOA violation notice she'd issued while standing next to the wreckage her son had caused. The officer watched the collision footage twice, then a third time, and I swear I saw him fighting back a smile. The audio was particularly damning. You could hear Tyler's voice through the car window saying, "Bro, watch this," right before the impact, followed by a string of words I won't repeat. The officer closed his notebook and stood up, adjusting his duty belt. "Okay," he said, his voice careful and professional. "We'll handle the lesson plan." He paused at my door. "Do me a favor and don't talk to Miss Larch or her son until we've completed our investigation." I nodded. That was the easiest favor anyone had ever asked of me. 2 days later, 2 officers arrived at Greta's door in the middle of the afternoon. I wasn't trying to spy, but my office window faces their house, and it's hard to miss 2 patrol cars with their lights on parked in your neighbor's driveway. I watched from my window as Greta emerged, dressed like she was attending a charity gala. Full makeup and a dress that probably cost more than my monthly mortgage payment. "Officers, so glad you're here," she began, her voice dripping with false sweetness, even from 50 yards away. "This man has been harassing my family, and now he's filing false claims about my son." She gestured dramatically toward my house like I was some kind of criminal mastermind. The sergeant, a woman with silver hair and the bearing of someone who'd seen everything twice, held up a printout of Tyler's selfie. "Ma'am, your son was operating a vehicle registered to you. He appears to be using a mobile phone while driving. The collision was with a fixed object on private property owned by Mr. Mercer." Greta's face went through several emotions in rapid succession: confusion, realization, anger, and finally indignation. She tried to pivot back to HOA authority. Her safety net for every situation. Mailboxes must be compliant with our community standards. His was combative in its placement. The sergeant's expression didn't change. "Brick doesn't lunge, ma'am," she said in the flattest voice I'd ever heard. Meanwhile, the second officer was walking Tyler through the footage on a tablet out in the driveway. Tyler had appeared in a t-shirt and sweatpants, looking like he just rolled out of bed, even though it was 3 o'clock in the afternoon. When the audio played and everyone heard Tyler say, "Bro, watch this," right before impact, Tyler's shoulders deflated like a punctured pool float. He tried to explain, his hands moving in frantic gestures, but the officer just kept playing the video on a loop. The officers spent another 30 minutes at Greta's house. I couldn't hear everything, but I caught phrases floating across the gap between our properties, leaving the scene. False report, insurance fraud, and my personal favorite, obstruction. When they finally left, Greta's face was the color of expired yogurt. She stood in her doorway, staring at my house with an expression I'd never seen before. It wasn't anger, it was fear. The tickets came first, delivered by certified mail. Improper use of a handheld device while driving. Failure to maintain control of a vehicle. Leaving the scene of an accident without exchanging information. Each one carried points and fines, stacking up like cordwood. Then came the adult conversation about filing a false police report and attempted insurance fraud. The officers asked if I wanted to press charges for the property damage. I nodded once. At the station, Tyler learned that being 18 is fun until the paperwork says adult in bold letters at the top of every form. Greta called the HOA attorney, who unhelpfully explained that HOA covenants do not supersede state law or basic physics. The insurance adjuster, now very interested in the case after seeing the words false claim in the police report, watched my footage 3 times and immediately approved full restitution for everything. Rebuilding the mailbox to the exact approved specification Greta had been. Weaponizing my gate repair, which required custom welding lawn restoration that needed complete resolding because Tyler's exit path had torn up 30 square ft of grass, and the cost of a temporary postal stand the city required during reconstruction, complete with installation and removal fees. Meanwhile, Greta's world was collapsing in other ways. An emergency HOA meeting was called by 3 board members who were apparently tired of her reign. I didn't attend, but I got the minutes via email. 14 homeowners had signed a petition calling for her removal, citing abuse of authority, harassment, and bringing disrepute to the community. The vote wasn't even close. Court day arrived 4 weeks later, like Christmas morning. I put on my best suit, gathered my evidence folders, and arrived 30 minutes early. Tyler showed up in a button-down shirt that was clearly borrowed from his father, looking like he was attending his own funeral. Greta wore black and pearls, her armor of choice. Tyler pleaded no contest to all charges after his public defender took one look at the video evidence and had a quiet conversation with him in the hallway that lasted 3 minutes. I watched Tyler's face crumble as reality set in. Greta's false report charge was heard separately. The prosecutor played my doorbell footage on a screen for the entire courtroom. When the brick explosion happened in high definition, several people gasped. One person in the gallery actually laughed before catching themselves. The judge, a gray-haired man who looked like he'd been on the bench since the courthouse was built, watched the footage and sighed like a man who'd seen this performance too many times. He removed his glasses, cleaned them slowly, and put them back on. "A mailbox is not an assailant, Miss Larch," he said, peering over those glasses at her with an expression of profound disappointment. "Your son crashed into a stationary object while distracted by a mobile device. Your subsequent actions, attempting to shift blame, file false reports, and misuse your HOA authority to intimidate a victim, have wasted considerable municipal resources." Tyler's driver's license got a 90-day suspension and mandatory enrollment in a driver safety course that meets at 7 in the morning every Saturday for 12 weeks. His community service assignment was specific and poetic. 200 hours rebuilding every chipped curb number and repainting every faded street line in Birch Ridge Meadows, all under the supervision of the city's grumpiest public works foreman, a man named Dale, who supposedly made grown contractors cry. The judge wasn't finished. He turned to Greta, and the temperature in the courtroom dropped 10 Ms. "You are hereby ordered to pay a fine of $4,000 for filing a false police report, plus $800 in court costs. You will also post a public written apology on the Birch Ridge Meadows HOA website, acknowledging that Mr. Mercer's mailbox did not leap into traffic and that your son was solely at fault for this accident. This apology will remain posted for no less than 6 months." Greta stood frozen in the courtroom, her mouth opening and closing like a fish drowning in air. "But, Your Honor," she started to say, her voice cracking. The judge simply looked at her and said, "We are done here, Miss Large." The gavel came down with a crack that echoed through the courtroom like a gunshot. And Greta Large, HOA president, neighborhood enforcer, and Mother of the Year, finally ran out of